Larry here with your pressure break for this week. It's Thursday. We had an incredible night at student ministry last night. We set up Romans chapter 2. We were only looking at a few verses, but we used the book of Ecclesiastes to set it up. We talked about the meaninglessness and the pointlessness of life when we are separated from God, and then we were trying to tie that into what connects us to a relationship with Jesus. We ended up talking about so many things, generations. I'm Gen X. We talked about my parents' generation. They are basically baby boomers, and we talked about the silent generation before them, mainly because the generation that's coming up is called the new silent generation. And of course, every generation that is born onto this earth starts to discover that there are indeed problems, and of course they want to fix problems, and they assume that the generations before them are the ones that really screwed them up, so to speak. And obviously that's partially true, but at the same time, maybe some things are unfixable, and maybe patterns repeat themselves historically over time. And so looking at Solomon's wisdom from Ecclesiastes 3,000 years ago, and then comparing it to certain things that we are discovering now, was pretty exciting for us last night. But Romans chapter 2, just the first 5 verses, really spoke to us, because what we want to do is avoid stubbornness in our heart. So Romans 2, 1 through 5 says this: "You, therefore, have no excuse, you who pass judgment on someone else, for at whatever point you judge another, you are condemning yourself, because you who pass judgment do the same things. Now we know that God's judgment against those who do such things is based on truth. So when you, a mere human being, pass judgment on them and yet do the same things, do you think you will escape God's judgment? Or do you show contempt for the riches of his kindness, forbearance, and patience?" This part's important. "Not realizing that God's kindness," I'll say that again, God's kindness is intended to lead you to repentance. But because of your stubbornness and your unrepentant heart, you are storing up wrath against yourself for the day of God's wrath, when his righteous judgment will be revealed." Bottom line for today: don't be stubborn. It's interesting, in our boys' small group last night at student ministry, the idea of us being able to essentially lie to ourselves or rationalize things with ourselves and trick ourselves into thinking things are okay. That maybe we mentally believe God exists, so somehow we magically have a ticket to heaven without going through this process of actually caring, of actually being sorry for our sin, for our failure, for our shortcoming, and then letting that repentance turn into our connection point with God, so that all of a sudden we're so focused on our relationship with God that we want to share, our freedom. We want to share the gospel with other people before we want to judge other people. It's an incredibly important thing to grasp, to understand, to get. But I think as we do that, we become more likable. Not that the goal is to conform or to be more likable, but honestly, if somebody can look at you and say, wow, they are being so real about their sin, the failure, the mess in their life, but at the same time, they've got this freedom. They've got something different about them. They've got an excitement about them despite the muck and the mire of the world. Maybe, just maybe, they've got something that I don't have, and I need to discover what that is. It comes across a lot better than just standing up and pointing your finger and saying, this is sinful, this is wrong, this is bad, you're not doing it right. Because honestly, nobody wants to hear those words. So this has been your pressure break. Pray about that. Read Romans chapter 2. Read the entire book of Ecclesiastes and see what you can come up with to help your life be more effective in sharing the gospel. We'll see you next week.